Hey guys, it's Greg from East Coast Dice, and I'm going to talk to you about stringing a low pocket. So a low pocket, like the one I have here, is where the pocket sits below the middle of the head. So it's going to be down in this bottom third of the head. So when you cradle, the ball will sit all the way down low. Now there's a couple advantages to stringing a low pocket. And the one is when you go to cradle one-handed, the ball is going to shift all the way down and sit down in the bottom of the throat of the head, where the head's narrowest. So this is going to give you the most hold and the least chance of losing the ball when you're cradling one-handed and you take a check. Also, a low pocket generally will have less whip than a low pocket. So you're going to have a really smooth release with very little whip, so you're not going to have to worry about winging the ball over the field and having it throw right in the ground. So you can see a low pocket will generally have a very smooth, very crisp transition throughout the head, so it's not going to catch or anything or whip straight out. But there's also a couple disadvantages of low pockets, and one is they have a very long release. Since when you throw the ball, it has to come from all the way down here and get all the way out. When you throw it, it's going to take a lot longer to get out than a high pocket would, where it would just flick right out of the stick. So this could be a disadvantage for attackmen when they're cradling and they want to really quickly make a quick feed. It's going to take longer to get the ball out of the stick. Also, like I said, as an advantage, low pockets generally have lower whip, but some players want more whip, so it's very hard to put more whip into a low pocket. So the most common position for a low pocket to be used is attack, because they're the position that spend the most time with the stick in one hand, running across X, carrying the ball, changing directions. So since they spend the most time in one hand, you're going to want a pocket that's going to hug the ball when you're cradling one-handed and let the ball drop all the way down. So it's perfect for attackmen. But like I said, it also has a slower release. So an attackman won't be able to get the ball out very quickly, or when they come out of their dodge, you won't be able to shoot it quite as quickly. So one thing you can do with a lower pocket to create a quicker release is move your shooting strings down in the stick. So instead of having them all the way up at the top, you would maybe start a little bit lower and have a V or another straight somewhere down in this area of the stick. And that's going to make the ball come off those shooting strings much earlier, so it'll add a quicker release while still maintaining a low pocket. Now another thing people like to do to have a low pocket but also have that high pocket release is an Iroquois top string. And so this is a situation where the mesh starts all the way down here, and the top part, it has a very long top string that comes down to meet the mesh somewhere in the top of the head. So the mesh would be attached to the scoop via a very long top string, and that would make the ball release where the mesh stops. So since the mesh is stopping down here, the ball will release down here. So the pocket's still low, but it's still going to have a release point somewhere higher in the head, so it releases a little bit quicker. To add whip, also moving the shooting strings down in the head will add a little bit of whip for attackmen if they like more whip in their stick, and also more hold. For defensemen, low pockets aren't that commonly used. A lot of the times defensemen like more whip so that they can have really crank the ball for those long passes and those crossfield passes. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend a low pocket for defensemen. I would recommend a mid pocket. But if you were going to have one as a defenseman, I would suggest the same thing as attackmen, in that you put the shooting strings a little bit lower and maybe make the pocket shift up a little bit more for when you cradle and you want to make that long pass. Midfielders, it's a little bit more common for midfielders to have a low pocket, because when they dodge, they have it right here in the box and they'll do a split dodge, and it's going to be upright a lot of the time. But when you're running down the alley and you're taking a big outside shot or a big alley shot, you are going to want some whip. So I would suggest that a midfielder that wants to use a low pocket have one that's a little bit baggier, so when they go to take that cradle right before they take a big shot down the alley, the ball will shift up in the stick to right under their shooting strings and catch there a little bit, so they can untwist their body and unload the shot, and it'll shift up a little bit. But while they're cradling, the pocket can shift down, and they'll be able to cradle one-handed and have the ball really have nice hold. So that's how you would use a low pocket for each position. Just a couple of tips when you're stringing low pocket. Generally, you're going to want to interlock a little further down the head than you would when you were stringing a mid pocket. So you can interlock almost down to the a little bit less than the halfway point, maybe 2/3 of the way down the head. Then you want to have a couple double ups and a few singles. So you want to interlock the mesh tightly down to halfway down the head, and then bunch the mesh up a little bit so to create that pocket. For the bottom string, you want to make sure you don't have a really long bottom string and that your bottom string isn't what's creating your low pocket, because if it is, then it'll create inconsistencies. So you can see here the bottom string on this stick is very tight, and what creates the pocket are these mesh holes that are bunched up on the side. So that's very important. So you can see the difference between a low pocket and a mid pocket in these two heads. This one over here is a pocket with pretty much in the middle of the head. You can see this one sits much lower. So that's how you want to string your low pocket, and depending on which position you play or how much whip you like or how quick you like your release, you may want to adjust it a little bit. So I want to thank you guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the Lacrosse Network for live streams, broadcasts, coverage on all kinds of lacrosse and highlights, and make sure to check out my channel, East Coast Eyes. Thanks for watching.